Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about speaking and languages and stuff like that. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how have you handled working with non-native speakers in the past? Well, this is a good question, I suppose, but the simple answer is that most programmers are expected to know English. That's the language of the web. Or rather, it's the language of programming for most. Now, except maybe if you work in certain parts, if you work in China or so forth, there are absolutely exceptions to this rule. But that's pretty much the answer right there. The person, I think we should have a little bit of context here. So the person who asked this question is from here in Sweden, and this person identified himself to me as an immigrant. That's exactly what he said. He told me that this was the case. And I can imagine that someone who is new in a country and learning learning how to speak and so forth, and trying to learn Swedish in this case, which is very flattering that you're trying to learn this extremely small little language that has all of these irregular verbs, and it's a shit show to learn Swedish. I can imagine that such an individual would be a little bit worried that, I want to be a programmer as well, and my Swedish isn't up to scratch. How am I going to be able to do that if everybody is going to expect, that I can speak Swedish? But the fact of the matter is that the deficit of programmers, just globally, is so massive that it is rare that a real serious IT company only has native speakers in the company. Most companies have a requirement that you actually know English in order to even be able to work as a programmer. One part is because most of the learning materials out there on the internet is based on English. You can't expect to go and find documentation in your language every single time. Maybe if you use something like Google Translate or so forth, but for most people even the syntax for most languages is actually in English. The one exception I know is that I knew one guy who he wrote his own implementation of Java where he changed all of the keywords to Swedish instead. That was a fun project. But for most people, English is a very natural part of everyday life. So I would say that not knowing how to speak Swedish here in Sweden if you want to work as a developer is not a really big deal in comparison to not knowing English. Not knowing English, that's a very different matter because, as I said, most companies have international staff and there is a requirement that all of them can communicate in some fashion, and English is, at least here in Europe, it's the way that this happens, or it's the way it's done. I mean, I work with tons of coworkers who are they're from they're all over the place. I have coworkers from Russia, from India, from China, from South Africa. They're all over the world. Like an Austrian guy, just everywhere. Like literally from the entire globe. And we need to be able to communicate. None of them speak Swedish. A few of them maybe, but not at a native level. And the same thing would be expected of me. At my last job, I worked with a company in the UK. The English was the way that we communicated, and they had people from all over, an even bigger company where they had hundreds of employees that were from all places across the globe. So this is I would say, in a way, it's kind of funny because of the deficit of programmers, it's almost like it's bringing, at least this little part of the industry, it's almost like it's bringing people together. It's creating a metropolitan type of community because you're if you're not able to find people within your own sphere, like here for example, my little town of Gothenburg, there's simply not enough people to go around. Like people are just moving from company to company. The pool of the programmers is so depleted that it's very natural for people to to just fly in from abroad, like to start living here in Gothenburg. Like they come from India and they come from Russia and from the Ukraine, like they come, or Bulgaria, a lot of people come there as well. It's like it brings, like it creates an international community very naturally, because it's the only way that you can sustain a company overall, because you don't have enough people who actually know it within your own local community, so you need to go international. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're worried that you're going to have a problem finding a job just because you're not speaking the native language in a country, odds are that you might just be you're worrying yourself, because the fact of the matter is that it's almost a requirement for every job that I know of that you speak English if you want to be a programmer. And if the case was that you had to be a native speaker, then the company would most likely never hire you. It would very clearly say, because the norm is that you should know English, and that English is the way that you can communicate. So if you have a hard requirement that you should speak, in our case, Swedish in order to get a job, the company would be aware of that they're asking for something that may not actually be the norm, and then you would be caught in the screening process and probably not get the job. So you don't have to worry that they're going to hire you and then you're not going to be able to speak, say, Swedish or, I don't know, Polish or whichever language that you're speaking, right? You don't have to worry that you're going to get into the company and then be asked to communicate in a language that you don't feel comfortable with. English should be fine for most cases, and the reason is very simple, because there's not enough programmers to go around, and therefore companies hire people from all across the world and from all kinds of communities just to fill their quota. So programming is probably one of the most international professions there is, just in general. So English, for sure, is the thing that you should be focusing on. Have a great day.